There are changes coming for new appraisers coming into this profession. What do these changes mean? What is being considered? And how will it affect the industry going forward? Stick around and find out.
ACI introduces ACI Sky Workbench, a cutting-edge cloud-based platform designed to streamline UR/AR appraisal report generation like never before. With seamless workflow integration, automated data management, and built-in compliance, Workbench empowers appraisers to work smarter, faster, and with greater accuracy. Visit aciweb.com for more info. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast with your host, Hal Humphreys.
Welcome back, everyone, to today's Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Jim Morrison. With me, as always, is our host, Hal Humphreys. I'm going to bring him in. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
Howdy, Jim. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Well, we have some exciting news that appraisers entering the industry need to know about. Our guest today is Lisa Desmarais. She's the Vice President of Appraisal Issues at the Appraisal Foundation. She's been leading the AQB's reconsideration of the real property appraiser qualification criteria. Let's get started on it.
Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I think most of the folks that listen to the Buzzcast know who Lisa Desmarais is. But just in case there's somebody out there that doesn't know, introduce yourself for us. Tell us about your history in the industry and how you ended up in your current position.
Okay, so I was a practicing appraiser for 30 years, did residential work, and then I did some instructing and I did some regulatory work as well. So I've been around the industry in all different areas, and I eventually, found this job here at the Appraisal Foundation just because I am deeply obsessed with standards and particular nuanced details. So that's the role I have here now. I am the technical support for the two boards that write USPAP and the criteria for how you become an appraiser.
I love it. And I can attest to the fact that Lisa is, in fact, one of the leading experts on USPAP because I have called her and emailed her on occasions to ask specific questions about detailed, nuanced things. And she always points to the documents, the guidance, the actual USPAP document, and comes back with very clear and concise answers. Lisa, let's get to the matter at hand. Why did the AQB decide to take such a deep look at the qualifications criteria?
I mean, really, on one level, the public was actually asking for it themselves, but there was also that part that we just understood. We've had the criteria in effect for, I don't know, well over 30 years, and it definitely has changed over the years, but those have all been kind of like add-ons or fillers or just kind of adjusting things here and there as we learned more. This is that total, complete, holistic relook. So the industry itself has really changed since we've all started this. You know that, Hal. I mean, it's just totally different than it was 30 years ago. And the expectations of appraisers have really changed. And the really cool thing, I think, I know people are gonna say, like, this is cool. Yes, enforcement has really changed. It's really improved a lot. So that takes a lot of the burden off of the criteria to have to be super extra careful about all the requirements.
Yeah. This has been described as a multi-year effort. Can you walk us through the process? For example, stakeholder engagement, concept papers, and the job analysis survey. How does all of this input kind of work together to guide you guys in this review process?
Yeah, just think of this like as your most huge, largest ever appraisal you've done in your life, where you're going to go back in history and figure out, what have I done before? How did we even get here? What have we learned? What's the environment that we exist in? What are the laws and regulations that have changed over the years? So we started with understanding our history so we could kind of ground ourselves as we knew what to keep. And then you go out and you say, all right, I tell everybody what we're doing, and you ask for feedback in as many possible places as you can. So the concept papers are an attempt to reach out to anybody who's interested. We have advisory groups, you know about those, who we engage directly and say, what do you think? What should we be doing? And then the job analysis survey is also that direct link to the appraiser on the job. And that we wrapped that up a couple of months ago, and that just went out to 60,000 appraisers. And we had I think it was, I'm going to get the number wrong, 7 or 9% of people filled it out, which is really high for a survey. That's a really good turnout. So we took all that information, and you have to make it work all together to start to make decisions about how to move the criteria forward. So I guess the shortest answer is it's just about being as transparent as you can and trying to reach out to as many people as possible to take everybody's view into consideration when you do this.
Yeah, and you slot all of these opinions, ideas, notions into a rubric and then kind of work your way through what makes sense, I'm guessing.
I mean, that's really a great way to describe it. So, because it was so complicated at this level, and then actually, I should also mention we also have to add on, we did a ton of research into the topics that we were interested in, especially about like, do you need a college degree? How do other people qualify their professionals for their job? That gets exhausting because that's that research level work that you usually see at college. So all of these documents together, it's one human brain can't handle it all. So
Yeah.
there's the gift and the great thing about artificial intelligence. So we hired the Decision Lab. They're experts in behavioral science to help compact all these things into simple questions. I mean, that doesn't mean we lost the nuance of it. They're very good at understanding how to guide the board through that. So yeah, we kind of are doing a rubric, I guess.
I love it. Well, let's talk about the purpose of this work. What are the main goals the AQB is aiming for, and how do you balance removing unnecessary barriers while maintaining competency and public trust? And when I'm talking about removing unnecessary barriers, I'll just give you an example before I get your answer.
Okay.
Um, some of the barriers to entry, I think almost every appraiser in the country can understand that's kind of silly. Why do we do that? And it almost seems to me like the answer comes back, well, I was hazed, therefore everybody else should be hazed. So what is the purpose of the work, and then how do you balance those things? Removing the unnecessary barriers while maintaining competency and public trust.
I love that analogy of I was hazed, therefore you should be hazed. It's very important. This is another reason why we hired the Decision Lab. We wanted to make sure that that bias was not in there because they're experts in helping guide the board through making decisions that aren't biased. And that is a very real part of us. And we want to make sure that wasn't in there.
Yeah.
So by removing barriers and taking the responsible step of recognizing the human part of us and really going further with having the Decision Lab help, the goals of this, I mean, the catchword everyone always says is, well, we're modernizing the criteria, but that doesn't say a lot. Really, what we're doing is we're making sure that what was in there is in there for the right reasons and it does what it's supposed to be doing. And are there any other pathways we can add that could deal with other ways people go about gaining their skills? And then you have to balance all of that with you have to preserve and strengthen the public trust, and then you have to balance that with the realities of how the regulatory systems work. So it's deeply complicated.
Yeah, totally. And I'm just going to suggest that the part of reworking criteria and what it takes to become an appraiser in a transparent fashion, the way that you guys are approaching this, one of the parts of the eroding of public trust is the kind of opaque method for becoming an appraiser over the past several years. There's no way for someone in the general public to really understand how it happens. So I think the transparency part is critical to kind of educating the public. A lot of times we hear people talk about public trust and what the public is considering, and a lot of times we think the public is considering things that they haven't even thought of. So I think transparency is a really key part of this. Moving on to education, you mentioned education in your answer. It's a big area under review, including the college degree requirement and qualifying education. What is being considered what is being considered here, and how might this change pathways into this profession that we all love so much?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really when the college degree requirement and the college course related requirements came in, America itself was kind of in a different spot related to what it expected its professionals to have when it came out with any credential. And we really moved in different directions. So this is why you always have to reconsider the criteria. So is that college degree really in there for the right reason? Is there a better way to replicate what it's sitting in that place for? So they're asking, you only need a full college degree for CG. That's peer requirement for that, and you just need college courses for the CRE level. But is there a way to perhaps remove those requirements and instead have the person take perhaps more actual appraiser related education itself? So we're reviewing the amount and the content of the qualifying education and making sure it reflects today's practice. And part of what makes appraising so hard to figure out how to train everybody is that it requires not just the education in the theory of appraising, but look at all the other random skills you have to be able to do this. And you can't
Yeah.
always get that. So that's why the college degree and courses were in there to kind of account for that. But maybe the right way to approach this is to say, like, well, you're probably not going to be able to get through these QE courses anyway, unless you have the ability to do statistics and write well and all that. So they're discussing all of that for sure.
Okay, okay. And you mentioned how do I get this experience generally in your answer, and that brings us very nicely to the next question, which is experience requirements have long been a challenge for new entrants. What are you hearing about logging pathways and the role of PARIA, and what about the idea of a skills-based pathway?
Yes, you must be in tune with us very much there, Hal. Uh, So obviously experience is deeply important because that is the piece of the puzzle where you show you know how to put everything together, which in my mind, I don't know how you can be an appraiser if you just know theory. Like that was the easy part of the of learning how to do this. So we've had the supervisor training model, and traditionally when it first started, it was pretty effective because most appraisers were working in banks, supervisors were already there. So the theory behind it started out really well. But as you went through time and laws changed around us and the way we do our business changed around us, it just became less and less effective. And it got a lot more difficult for people, difficult for people to find supervisors. So that's the one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is PARIA. So that it's structured, it's accessible. So what that is it's experience you do in a virtual environment. And it's a very real solution for many people, though that one comes with concerns about cost and availability. It's a difficult, it's a very hard program to put together as the creator, and so that's been rolling out slowly. Then you mentioned the last thing, which is the skills-based pathway, and it's just that beautiful sounding phrase, skills-based pathway, and it's like everything else, it all comes down to definition of how you handle it, what it means, and it actually gets really complicated really quickly. So the concept is that instead of logging hours, you instead would be demonstrating skills. Great. Okay, but it quickly gets pretty tough. It's like, well, who verifies the skills? Should they verify the skills? What counts as proof? Do they have to show mastery or just practice it? Mastery to what level? Yada, yada, yada. The AQB is working through all these questions because they're really committed to putting forth a skills-based pathway. But this is probably one of the more complicated concepts that I've ever seen them deal with. But I guess at the end of the day, the AQB really, with any pathway that they put out there, they really just have to ask two questions. And one is, does it produce someone that's minimally qualified to complete an appraisal? That's all. That's our goal, minimally qualified. And number two, and this is the harder one also, is it plausible in practice? Is it feasible? That's the hard one.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. All right, so we've kind of talked about education and experience. Let's move on to examinations. It's part of the conversation. What are the possible changes to the exam model or timing? And why is and I've heard this said a couple times, I've even posed it as a kind of a thought problem. Attorneys pass a bar exam and they're called attorneys, and then they get their, boots on the ground experience from their mentor kind of business. Why is a so-called super exam not on the table?
I guess you can start with, super exam. Yes, that word, we hear it around, but like, how is it defined and what does it mean in our space? And that is the example people will bring up is attorneys and also accountants. But the difference with them is that comes with 4 to 6, I don't know how many years of actually working through case studies. You're in an environment, so you're actually kind of practicing law in a safe space. So the super exam comes after you've done all that experience, if you will. So when you look at it in the appraiser world, the thing that's different because we don't have a degree, there's no way you can go get a degree in appraising. What people really mean when they're saying a super exam for appraising is they mean take your qualifying education, and then one big exam, and then you're done, and then go out there and get your experience. But the problem with this, the AQB at this point has is recognized, is that this really misses the core of what appraisers do. That they don't just know theory, they put it all together. And I don't think the public is going to be super thrilled if we said, yeah, they learned a theory, but no, we've never actually seen them do appraisal report at all. And you and I know that that was the most difficult part, was figuring out how to put all that stuff together.
Yeah.
So the whole skill of being an appraiser is, like, how you research, how you analyze, making judgments. I mean, that's what USPAP's all about. It's the judgment piece. And I don't know how you test that in an exam. I mean, maybe you can, but I don't know how. So basically, I don't know of any profession that really skips that where you practice competency that is like this type of a job. So basically, I think that super exam model for this type of profession that's actually quite small, it would be extremely costly and difficult to implement. And I really don't think there's any real clear demand for it.
Yeah.
So instead, the AQB is focusing on, really practical improvements, like the timing of the exams, maybe modular formats, I don't know, skills-based pathways that can require candidates to demonstrate their work, maybe putting more emphasis on that.
Yeah, I like the explanation of the law school model. Like you've got, typically speaking, you've got 3 years of law school, during which time you're trained on theory, you're trained on precedent, you're trained on how the law works, and you're also put into a mock courtroom, and you're judged by your peers in a mock courtroom experience to see how you handle that kind of thing. So that makes perfect sense to me. The difference between the two, and the same thing with the accountant analog being, there's the opportunity in a structured learning environment to experience case studies and have people critique your work and critique how you approach things. So, look, what is the answer? I certainly don't know. I think you guys are doing a good job of trying to get to the answer. One thing I'm kind of curious about, you have mentioned the decision lab, and the regulatory group as part of this structured process, and I'm really curious about the decision lab. Can you explain how these groups support the AQB in making evidence-based, bias-resistant decisions?
Sure. And actually, you just mentioned the other group. I know you've heard me talk about it before, the regulatory group. I'm going to touch on them really, really quickly. The regulatory group is one of these golden little gems I just found out there. This tiny little company whose expertise is writing federal regulations. I mean, how cool is that? So they're experts in writing plain language. So we've engaged with them to make sure the new criteria is easy to read and well organized, and they follow federal plain language writing guidelines. Yes, there are federal plain language writing guidelines, and Hal, you've probably read them because they're super exciting to read. But you asked about the decision lab, and I think the best way to describe what they do is just go look on their website, and you're going to see about how they have all of these processes that deal with how the brain actually thinks, to make sure that you know what each person thinks going into solving the problem, what things they don't understand in the middle, and then they all do blind, if you will. They all go through these exercises where they individually are filling out their opinions, and it tests if they react consistently with themselves. So then at the end, they can't inadvertently push the answer in a certain direction because they kind of prefer a certain answer. A lot of people are surprised with what they actually prefer, and they're kind of like, I mean, the first time, this is so cool. The first time this decision lab popped all the results up on the screen, we were in a work session in person. Everybody shot up from the table and ran right to the screen. They were all pointing and, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So it's really cool stuff.
I love it. My gut desire in the deepest part of my soul is to address things in plain language. I think the confusing, trying to address every possible, lawyer answer to questions sometimes causes more trouble than it does good. And I love the fact that you guys are looking at the regulatory group and looking at plain language writing for regulations. I think that is one of the biggest steps in the right direction I have ever seen.
Thanks.
Where are we now in the timeline? What should we appraisers expect in the upcoming exposure draft?
So the AQB is like head down hard at it like crazy right now. We're hoping to get the exposure draft out by the end of the year. There's still some snags in it because tying all this together is so complicated. And every time we move something, it, it pulls on something else. So we're working with the regulatory attorney to get all this stuff worked out. We really, really, really hope to get it out by the end of this year. At the latest, we promised everybody April of next year at the very latest. So just keep your eye out for that. We desperately need people to take a look at this because this is your profession. This is your gift to
Yeah.
the people who come behind you, if you will.
Yeah, eyes open, fingers crossed, we can meet some deadlines and get this done in a timely fashion. And part of that for my listeners is if you are involved in this space, if you are an appraiser, if you are adjacent to appraisers, if you're involved in this space, take the time to read through the exposure draft and offer your responses, offer your critiques, offer your ideas. That's the only way if you just ignore it and then the rules change, you've lost the opportunity to come back and say, well, that's not the way it should be. You're getting that opportunity right now. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, no, thank you, Hal. That's actually the whole point of this is to tell people we need your voice. And I think I want to stress when I say I need your voice, I don't need you to contact me and write to me, the AQB, in a very specific way. It doesn't have to be a formal letter, it doesn't have to be informal. It could be a text. I mean, I literally just need whatever your opinion is. However you feel best able to express that, and don't even feel compelled to have to look at the entire document. Maybe only two or three pieces speak to you. We
Yeah.
just need whatever is in your heart that you feel needs to be said, and whatever way you say it, to say it to us.
I love it. I love it. All right. So, last thing, what do you want appraisers listening today to take away about this process and why it matters to our profession?
I think one thing, I hope that people understand how seriously we take this and how we humbly approach it, and that as the Appraisal Foundation, I'm just deeply impressed with how they work so hard to do all of the hard work and to ask the hard questions and to not making assumptions and to even look at their own bias in that process. And then that this is really about shaping the future of the profession. I'm talking 10 years down the road. And it's about giving that gift to those who are sitting there waiting to come in behind you. Maybe you have kids who want to do this and they don't have a degree. Give them the gift of helping us write the right criteria for the times.
Yeah. Let me do this. Let me ask you a question. And I gave a pause there, a nice long pause, so that if we need to edit this out, we can. Would you mind talking really briefly about your new podcast that you're working on that I heard a little bird talking about over the weekend?
Oh, sure. That would be great. Thank you for asking, Hal. We have a Praiser Talk, and we decided because all of the podcasts that people are listening to the most were USPAP. And then, of course, like I'm like crazy in love with USPAP. I just said, well, hey, can I just do like 100 episodes that really dive into all the little nuances of USPAP, 5 minutes at a time, if you will? So it's the digestible. It's like you said, Hal, it's plain language, and it makes it easier for you to find the content you want about USPAP, because I'm going to organize it in a very specific level that kind of follows the way the 15-hour course goes.
That's wonderful. That's exactly what I was looking for. I think when I heard last month about the notion of a new kind of podcast under Appraisal Talk that deals specifically with USPAP, I was pretty excited about that. And I know for anyone who's not an appraiser listening to this podcast, like you got excited about USPAP, and Lisa knows where I'm coming from. You can get excited about USPAP.
Yes, you can.
Well, let's do this. Let's take a real quick break and we'll hear from one of our sponsors, and we will be right back.
Intercorp, a division of Norman Spencer, has your back. Comprehensive insurance coverage from a team that's always there when you need them. The team at Norman Spencer is ready to roll up our sleeves and dig into your toughest insurance questions. We're committed to appraisers and AMCs. Intercorp's programs are tailored specifically for the appraisal industry. Put our experience to work for you. Please contact Susan Lomeli, Lomeli, at norman-spencer.com to discuss your insurance needs.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I'm joined today by Lisa Desmarais from the Appraisal Foundation. We've been talking about kind of the remodel of the AQB process, what it takes to become an appraiser. Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and help us walk through these things. Now, typically, Jim Morrison asks an anonymous appraiser question, and I'm convinced he does this just to trip me up and make me show my ignorance on topics. But I'm really comfortable, Jim. Tell me you've got an anonymous appraiser question, because I've got the expert in the room with me today.
Yeah, we have a really good one. If anybody has any comments for us in the future, you can reach out to us at comments@appraisalbuzz.com or just put them in the YouTube comments below. But this one says, "Hello everyone, I'm interested in becoming an appraiser. My boyfriend has his real estate license and suggested I look into it since I already have a bachelor's degree. I live in Southern California. This would be a career change for me as most of my background is in logistics. I was laid off in June, so I have time to study and learn. I would like feedback from the people in the industry. I'm willing to get the education I needed, but would you mind sharing what you did to get to where you are and the pathway you would recommend?"
To give everything away, I obtained my credential right when credentialing started. So the only path at the time was supervisor trainee. That was the only option. And now you said you have a bachelor's degree, so you've met one major requirement if you're looking at get your certified residential or your certified general. So there you go. You can look at either of those. You just mentioned about the education you need. So your next step then would be that qualifying educations. You're going to take all of the required courses that are called qualifying education. And to get that list, just contact your state. They'll tell you exactly what those courses are. Some courses require you to take them before they hand you even a trainee classification. Other states do not even have that classification, and you can just take the qualifying education at any time while you're gaining your experience. And then from there, you're going to choose your experience pathway. Like I just said, I had one choice, supervisor trainee. So that method is still available. The next one is the PREA program. That's that structured online course. And then depending on what state you're in, we're seeing more and more what we call practicum courses. It looks like an education course, but it's not. It's basically experience in a lab. So it's like a course. So really, like, what would I recommend? Pick the one that fits your lifestyle, makes the most sense to you, and then just love it, because you can go the coolest thing about this profession is, look at Hal and I have these super cool jobs. Who'd have ever thought? So appraising just has all these spider web things. So just follow the thing that your heart, that sings out to your heart, if you will.
Yeah, well, I have absolutely nothing to add to that, Lisa. You answered the question perfectly. Jim, do we need to cover anything else today?
No, we really appreciate your time today, Lisa. This was great information, and we'll include some documentation for any of the people looking for more information.
Great. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. So if we have nothing else, number one, thanks to Lisa Desmarais for joining us and sharing this update from the Appraisal Foundation. Incredibly important information. Keep your eye out for the AQB exposure draft, expected by the end of 2025, maybe a little bit later, we'll see. Take the opportunity, read it, provide your feedback, and we will see you next week on the Appraisal Buzzcast.